It's usually pretty sleepy around Queen's Park in the summertime, but not this year. With a fresh mandate from the people, Premier Doug Ford's government got right down to work, advancing several significant bills. Here to reflect on that busy summer sitting, the member responsible for planning and managing the government's legislative agenda, here's Todd Smith. He is the government House Leader, Minister of Government and Consumer Services, and the PC member for the Bay of Quinte. And we are delighted to welcome you as the first guest of this, our 13th season, here on the agenda.
Great to see you, Steve.
Nice to have you here. Let us just, a lot of people, of course, aren't as politically active over the summertime, so we want to catch up a little bit here for our first interview. Why'd you have this very unusual summer sitting to begin with?
Well, I think we got a strong mandate from the people on June 7th, receiving a majority government, obviously, and we wanted to get right down to work. The one thing I can say about our new Premier, Doug Ford, is that he is a workaholic. He loves to get things done. He loves Queen's Park. And so we had a number of urgent priorities that we wanted to get passed. That's why we had the Urgent Priorities Act as our first bill. A number of other key issues as well that we wanted to get addressed during the summer session, but it is a bit unusual for the legislature to be sitting during the summer. First of all, it's very, very hot at Queen's Park, but second of all, we did really want to get down to business and get some things done. We had a lot of promises that were made during the campaign, and the Premier wanted to keep those promises as quickly as possible.
Let me follow up with a bit of a touchy-feely question, which is, you've been an MPP for, what, 7 years?
7 years, yeah.
All of it on the opposition benches.
Yes.
I think of a guy like John Yakubuski, who'd been in politics 15 years, all of it on the opposition benches. You're now finally in government. How is that?
It's awesome. I mean, it really is. And for somebody like John Yakubuski, as you say, who's been there for 15 years, it must be like a dream come true, actually. It's been great, and Minister Yakubuski is also in cabinet with me, so it's been really a total change in the way life works for us now. You spend all of your time banging your head against the wall, it seems like, in opposition, but now here you are in the cabinet. You can actually make decisions rather quickly that are going to positively, hopefully, impact the province of Ontario. And Premier Ford refers to his all-star caucus all the time, but I feel we really do have an all-star cabinet there as well. A lot of really qualified people. Some have spent a lot of time in opposition. Some have spent some time in government before. And then you've got somebody like Minister Rickford, who's been a federal cabinet minister. So.
At what point do you realize, though, you can't just be a bomb thrower on the opposition? You guys are actually now responsible for a $150 billion corporation that is the government of Ontario.
Yeah, I mean, and now we're having the bombs thrown at us, right, on a regular basis. And you know what? We respect the job that the official opposition is doing in the legislature, but we're really focusing on delivering on the promises that we made to the people of Ontario.
Well, and here is a bit of a checklist here. Sheldon, shall we bring this up here? Here's what the government of Ontario has been up to over the last 67 days. They passed a bill to reduce the size of Toronto City Council to 25 members. You also stopped plans to elect regional chairs in Muskoka, Niagara, Peel, and York. You pledged to dismantle the cap-and-trade program, take the federal government to court to combat a carbon tax, cancel the basic income pilot program, scrap the 2015 sex ed curriculum, telling teachers to use the 98 curriculum in the meantime. You're carrying out consultations with parents that will form the basis of the new curriculum. You passed back-to-work legislation, which ended the nearly 5-month-long York University strike, pledged to allow the sale of marijuana online through private retailers, as opposed to what the Liberals had planned with the government-run stores. The Ontario Cannabis Store will now act as a wholesaler to private businesses. You allowed the minimum price of beer to be lowered to $1, frozen driver's license fee increases, halted any new emergency overdose prevention sites until a review is conducted to deem their necessity. That's not the whole list. It's a pretty long list. But you guys have clearly hit the ground running. I want to talk, before we focus on a lot of these items specifically, just about the expression that you guys use a lot in general. You always say you're for the people. And I want to know who the people are that you are for.
We're for the people of Ontario.
Not all 13 million of them, or whatever. What is it? What are we now?
Yeah, almost 14 million.
14 million,
yeah.
Okay. You're not for all of them, though.
Well, certainly not everybody agrees with everything. But one of the things that Premier Ford has sort of mandated from all of us within the caucus is that when we're making a decision about what we're going to do as far as the government goes, and whether you're in cabinet or in caucus, you think about the people and how the people are going to react to this. You're not doing it for a special interest group, you're doing it for the people of Ontario. And if you're not doing it for the people of Ontario, then you got to rethink it. And we have a lot of tough decisions ahead of us. Certainly, we've done a lot already, as you mentioned, but for the most part, these are things that we promised for the people, and we're delivering on them and starting to deliver on more and more every day.
Well, let's try this. There's one former progressive conservative senator, former progressive conservative advisor to Premier Bill Davis, former advisor to Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, named Hugh Segal. I don't know how well you know him, but he says your people perhaps doesn't include poor people because you cut the basic income pilot and the planned 3% welfare rate increase that the previous government put in, you've cut back to 1.5. How would you defend those decisions?
I would say, first of all, that we're increasing welfare rates by 1.5%. The Liberals made a promise to increase it by 3%. The Liberals weren't elected. We received a strong mandate from the people of Ontario. I know Hugh's wife, Donna, better than I know Hugh, but I do know that the basic income pilot project wasn't going to be the answer that the people of Ontario who were on social assistance wanted it to be.
How do you know that after only a year and a half when it's supposed to be a 3-year run?
Well, Minister MacLeod has done an outstanding job in getting a grip on what's happening within that ministry, and her ministry staff have informed her that this project, if it was to be rolled out across the entire province, would cost $17 billion. It would cause a massive increase to the HST in the province of Ontario. It's not something that was going to be sustainable or something that we could implement across the province, and she and the ministry learned that in the amount of time that the pilot has been operating. So what they have done is they've announced that they will end those payments as of the end of March next year, and in the meantime, she's been working very, very hard with her ministry staff in bringing in a new system for delivering social assistance that is going to benefit the people of Ontario, and she's going to unveil that in the next 2 or 3 months.
It's a funny thing about when you tape a program, because tape hangs around. And I want to just play a little excerpt from an agenda program that we did during the election campaign in which this issue came up. Here is the former Deputy Premier of the province of Ontario, Deb Matthews, on that show. Roll it.
The basic income pilot is, we're piloting in several communities across the province, including Hamilton, where people can choose to go on a basic income pilot where they get significantly more money than they would if they were on social assistance. And we're tracking whether or not their health improves, whether their reliance on healthcare system decreases, whether they're actually better able to work or go back to school. So this is a really important pilot that's taking place. People from around the world are watching the basic income pilot.
Including her party, incidentally. I think the Conservatives have said they would keep it if they won.
Yes, they did. We're glad to hear that.
There is Christine Elliott, who is now the Deputy Premier of the province and Minister of Health, on the record saying, yes, we will keep it. I know your mantra is promise made, promise kept, but this is pretty clearly, empirically, provably, a promise broken. How do you defend that?
Yeah, I would say, look, we've also made a promise to make sure that we're living within our means in Ontario, and we've spent millions on this project already. Why would we continue to spend millions and millions more over the next couple of years when we know that this isn't going to be the answer to the province's needs? We are committed, as Minister MacLeod has said, to bringing in something that is going to work, because clearly what's been in place over the last 15 years hasn't worked for those who are on social assistance. They are going to get the 1.5% increase this year, and then it will be really interesting to see what Minister MacLeod unveils in early November for the people who are on social assistance. But we have over 1 million people in Ontario. You talk about 14 million people in the province, over 1 million are dependent on social assistance. So we've got to find something that's going to work.
And you think that whatever Lisa MacLeod comes up with is going to be more generous than what was just canceled?
I don't know if it's going to be more generous, but hopefully it works better than the system that we have in place right now. Generosity is great if you can afford it, but we are a province that has a massive, massive problem with overspending and debt, and the Commission of Inquiry has just wrapped up, and I'm sure that Minister Fedeli is going to have more to say on that in the coming days, but we have a very, very deep hole here in Ontario that we have to dig ourselves out from, and adding a $17 billion program isn't going to be the answer.
Well, you keep saying $17 billion, but there's no guarantee that it was going to be $17 billion. It could have been less than that. You could have put... Anyway, let's move on. I want a better understanding of what requires consultation in a Doug Ford-led government and what doesn't. Because clearly on sex ed, you have said that consulting 4,000 parents wasn't enough, and you want to do more, and you want to consult tens of thousands of people before you figure out what that policy ought to look like. And yet, on the other hand, the decision to reduce the size of Toronto City Council and cancel those elections for regional chairs was done with zero consultation at all. So help me understand that. What needs consultation, what doesn't?
I would say that when you're reducing the size of Toronto City Council and there's an election coming up on October 22nd, you've got to act pretty quick if you want to make that happen. So that became an urgent priority for us over the summer months. There wasn't a whole lot of time to have extensive consultations on this, and Premier Ford and our cabinet felt that it was necessary to streamline Toronto City Council as quickly as possible and ensure that for the next 4 years we have a smaller City Council, save $25 million in the process. But more importantly, have a council that's going to work for the best interests of the people of Toronto when it comes to affordable housing, getting those projects done, transit, getting those projects done.
Do you not think, though, that it might have been a different approach to try to get on side the Mayor of Toronto in that mission, particularly since he's a former leader of your party?
Yeah, you know what, and I think at the end of the day, you'll see that Mayor Tory, should he remain Mayor Tory after the next election, will probably appreciate the work that's been done here by our government and some of the quick action and heavy lifting that's been done. I think everyone agrees that Toronto City Council has been unworkable at times, and we have council meetings that last hours and days at a time. Sometimes I'm not a regular follower of Toronto City Council, but by all accounts, it certainly hasn't been working as effectively as it could be.
You canceled cap and trade, which you said during the election campaign you would do. You are opposed to a carbon tax. Your government has made that clear as well. But you've also said you believe in climate change and that there will be an environmental plan come forward to deal with it. When can we look forward to seeing that?
Yeah, I know certainly over the summer, Minister Phillips has been working extremely hard, Rod Phillips and his team at the Ministry of Environment, to bring in the Cap and Trade Cancellation Act. And we should get that to committee probably in the next couple of weeks, certainly by the end of October. That should be completed so we can get people the relief that they want at the gas pumps and on their natural gas bills, et cetera, start lowering the price of everything in the province. As far as building out a more robust plan to deal with climate change, I mean, he will tell you, and certainly the Premier will tell you, that a regressive tax that's driving up the cost of everything in the province isn't the answer to ending climate change.
So what is?
Yeah, so that's what Minister Phillips is working on right now. I know that his team is working very hard. The other thing to keep in mind, Steve, and I know you understand this, is that when you win an election, it takes a while to get staffed up. And certainly all of our ministries have been working hard to get policy people in place so that we can build that robust climate change policy and action plan that will be forthcoming from Minister Phillips and his team.
Let's play you a little bit more tape. This time, it's actually not tape. I don't know why I keep saying that. We're in digital now. There's no videotape anymore. But anyway, here's Question Period from a few weeks ago. Question Period is always such good theater.
Yes.
Sheldon, go.
Can you explain why your party's talk is cheaper than your buck of beer?
Not once did that member ask for a briefing on basic income security when he was the minister. Never once did he ask what a basic income pilot project would be for Senate. That's $17 billion.
The member for Don Valley East must come to order. The government side must come to order. The Premier will come to order.
That's Ted Arnott, the Speaker, doing his best to try to get everybody to calm down a little bit. I know that Question Period, you know, in politics ain't beanbag, but it is at some level supposed to be sort of a little more civil, is it not? And I wonder what you guys are doing to try to make that happen.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, Question Period is theater of the absurd sometimes, but everybody wants to get their points across. Obviously, a provocative question there from Michael Coteau, and I couldn't quite hear what Minister MacLeod was saying in response, but, you know, I mean, listen, that's Question Period. Certainly everybody's going to stand up for what they believe in during Question Period and make sure that the media is paying attention to what they believe is important, and the messaging of each party is very, very important. I would say that sort of the mood in the legislature over the month of July and early August was probably harkens back to the gas plant scandals of the early 2011, 2012
Got pretty
session
ugly
of
there for a
Parliament.
while.
It did, and I think part of the reason for that is that we didn't really have a break from the election campaign. We continued right into the House sitting, and so there was that animosity that existed from the campaign when the House was sitting in the early days.
How odd is it for you, because we're in unprecedented times here, in as much as the government you replaced now does not have official party status, which means they can't really defend a lot of the things that you're trying to undo. Did you guys catch a break because of that in some respects?
No, I don't think so. I think it would be interesting to have the Liberals there continuing to try and defend what the people of Ontario have clearly said to them was unacceptable. We've never had a premier that was as unpopular as Kathleen Wynne over the last couple of years, and I think people were fed up with their policies. It would kind of be like smacking the piñata around, actually, if they were around asking questions during question period. The way it stands right now, the independent members, either the Liberals or the Green, get one question a day in question period, and then the official opposition gets the rest of them, aside from the government questions, of course. So, I actually welcome the questions from the independent Liberals who are there, because it's easy. The people of Ontario spoke loud and clear that they weren't happy with the direction that the Liberals had taken us, particularly over the last 5 years.
Have you seen Kathleen Wynne since you went back to the legislature?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And what do you say to somebody like that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, she's been in question period a couple of times.
More than a couple.
Yeah. So certainly, she's she did what she believed. We clearly didn't believe the same things. We believe that life should be more affordable. Certainly, I think a lot of the decisions that Kathleen Wynne and the Liberals made life very, very unaffordable. And those are the things that we're unwinding right now, whether it's the cap and trade program, or trying to reduce the cost of electricity by 12%, or making sure that we're not increasing fees and taxes. It seemed like every time you turned around, the Liberals were driving up the cost of living. Certainly, everything that we're doing as a new government is for the people, making sure that the cost of living goes down and it's more affordable to live here in Ontario.
Well, to that end, one of the things I've heard that you guys are in the process of trying to figure out is how to spend $6 billion less in this upcoming fiscal year, while at the same time not reducing services. Is that doable?
Yeah, I think so, and I think it's something that Premier Ford promised throughout the campaign. We're about to as I say, get the official look at the books from the Commission of Inquiry, who's done their work over the summer and is reporting back to Minister Fedeli and Minister Bethlen Falvey, and I'm sure that report will be made public, just so we do get a real lay of the land of what the finances look like in Ontario. But finding efficiencies in government spending without costing jobs is the focus right now.
Because he did say that. He said, no one's going to get fired. We're going to save $6 billion, and you won't see a reduction in your services. In fact, your hydro bill is going to go down, the cost of gas is going to go down. You can really do all of those things simultaneously.
Yeah, and a lot of those things we've already started to act on. I mean, people said we couldn't get rid of the board and the CEO at Hydro One, and that was one of the first things that we were able to do, was to send that culture shift change to Hydro One, saying no longer are you supposed to be focusing on returns for shareholders, making sure that affordable electricity should be your main priority, and that was one of the accomplishments over the summer as well. So, I mean, when it comes to finding efficiencies, I think that we can do that. The one thing that we're trying to do is involve those frontline workers in helping to advise us on where the waste exists and how we can make life more affordable for the people of Ontario, and make government run more efficiently than it's been running over the last 15 years.
A couple of minutes left here, and I want to just, I want to get a better understanding of what kind of a conservative you are. If I asked you to describe yourself, what kind of a Tory are you?
I hate pigeonholing like this, but I'm a guy who actually wants to deliver results for people, positive results for people. I'm a fiscal conservative. There's no question about that. Probably a little bit more progressive than some, but at the end of the day, what I want to do is just make sure that we're delivering good government. For the people of Ontario, responsible government, and making sure that we're living within our means, which is something that we haven't done for a long time.
Because as I understand the big blue tent in which many conservatives like to gather, there are economic conservatives, there are social conservatives, there are populists, there are libertarians, there are red Tories, which you have been described as. There are democratic conservatives who are real sticklers for rules. This is what the convention says you got to do. This is what nominating meetings ought to look like. I guess my question is, do red Tories still have a voice in the Ontario PC party?
Oh, absolutely.
How is that manifested?
Yeah, you know what? I think you're seeing it in what's happening. I mean, clearly we're taking a very, very hawk-like approach to the province's finances right now. With the work that Ministers Bethlen Falvey and Fedeli are doing on the economic front. No,
but that's for economic conservatives, and I get the sex ed rollback is for social conservatives, and then there are other policies to sort of make libertarians happy. What have you advanced that would make red Tories, like you, who supported Christine Elliott for leader, not Doug Ford, who had some tough things to say about Doug Ford during that leadership campaign? What red Tory stuff are you doing that you think people ought to know about?
Yeah, just bringing accountability and trust back to Queen's Park. I think that's something. Making sure that we are transparent so people can see what we're accomplishing, and being very open and honest. Trying to include people in decision making as we go forward. And just, certainly there were a lot of promises that were made during the election campaign. We want to deliver on those promises as quickly as we possibly can, and then start moving the province forward. And I think as you start to see the agenda roll out this fall, and we start working on some new ideas, you will start to see that this government is there for the people of Ontario, and that includes all of the people within the Progressive Conservative Party of Ontario.
Well, Todd Smith, I know you represent a riding about 2.5 hours east of here, so we are grateful that you made the long schlep to get in here to be with us today for our first program in this 13th season. We're grateful that you could spare some time for us at TVO tonight. Thanks so much.
Yeah, my pleasure, Steve.
That is Todd Smith, Government House Leader, Minister of Government and Consumer Services, and the MPP for the Bay of Quinte.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.